I rise to speak on the Excise Tariff Amendment Fuel Indexation Bill, the Customs Tariff Amendment Fuel Indexation Bill, Fuel Indexation Road Funding Special Account Bill and the Fuel Indexation Road Funding Bill 2015. But in particular, the aspect of these bills that I rise to speak about is the deal that's been done by the government and the Labor Party to increase the fuel tax that is going to be paid by Australians, with the money going all to roads. This is an example of the Labor Party completely capitulating and giving the government everything they wanted. In the year that I have been in the Senate, the discussion of the fuel excise has been on the agenda constantly. And the Greens' position has been strong and firm and consistent, that we were open to negotiations on an increase in fuel excise if that revenue was going to go to two things. One, towards public transport, so that we could begin the transformational change, support the transformational change that's needed in our communities to be building cities, building country regions that aren't dependent upon fossil fuels, so that people would have a choice to not have to drive their cars and drive their cars long distances. That was the first of our negotiation points. And the second was to address the impact that an increase in fuel prices was going to have on low-income people who currently don't have the choice to avoid spending that money. Labor have given the government everything they wanted. Right from the beginning, the government have been saying that they wanted to spend all of this increase in fuel taxes on roads. Roads, roads and more roads. They've been completely consistent as well, completely against the direction of having a society that is going to be reducing our carbon emissions and genuinely be interested in the welfare of people. But no, through the deal that Labor did yesterday, that's what they have delivered to the government. The government will be popping the champagne corks because it has completely derailed what was looking like potentially to be a successful negotiation between the Greens and the government to actually to be diverting that money into something that was going to be delivering on transformational change, to be delivering some of the fuel excise increase into a fund for public transport and to be delivering it into measures that would mean that there would be compensation for the low-income people that currently don't have a choice. What a missed opportunity. The other missed opportunity that we have here is a missed opportunity to beginning that transformation of our cities, a missed opportunity to be addressing the impacts of fuel prices on people. It's also a missed opportunity to be doing something about the fuel security that Australia currently has and doesn't have. We've currently got we've had a Senate inquiry into fuel security in Australia, which I understand is going to be reporting tomorrow. The submissions that have been given to that Senate inquiry have been very clear that with Australia's almost 100% reliance on imported liquid fuels, it leaves the country's industries, it leaves us as commuters, it leaves our transport systems extremely vulnerable to supply disruption and of exposing our economy to continually rising and volatile world prices for oil. This, under our current direction that we are heading, that's the reality that we are facing. Clearly, what we need to be doing in order to be addressing this major issue of fuel security is to be looking really seriously and to be building our use of other fuels other than fossil fuels. And the obvious solution, which is going to deal with our fuel security issues, it's going to deal with the climate change consequences of burning fossil fuels, and it's also going to deal with creating a place where low-income earners aren't going to be at the beck and call and at the risk of having to cope with increased oil prices, is to be shifting towards renewable transport fuels, in particularly shifting to public transport, which can be much more easily fuelled by electricity and can be accessible to people, the wide range of people, to be shifting our vehicle fleet to electric cars and to be using other renewable fuels. These are the sorts of directions we need to be heading. This is the sort of opportunity that we should be taking at every instance. We had an opportunity here that has been missed. And the impact on low-income people is going to be massive. I know from the work that I have done in the transport field over the last 2 decades that price matters, and that people do find that with increasing cost of fuel, that they aren't able to drive as far. It means that people miss out if they haven't got any other options. And I stand here as a Green really quite perturbed at the misunderstanding of the Greens' position on fuel prices and low-income people. And I think that it is quite... Our position has been very clear over the last 12 months of wanting to be really working with people, giving low-income people a choice. And I know from having spoken to people all across the country, and particularly across the state in the last 12 months, that people who are suffering the impacts of high fuel prices, they want to have the opportunity to be able to use public transport. There has been research that I've recently seen which collaborates other research that shows that even in outer suburban areas, even in rural areas, even in regional areas, you give people a choice of where they want to see transport funding being spent, and their #1 priority is on public transport, because people realise that they need to have a choice. They want to have the option. They want to be able to use public transport. But at the moment, where we don't have public transport systems available to people in outer suburban areas, they have no choice. And so an increase in fuel prices is going to mean that it's money that they're going to have to be putting into their petrol tank that they aren't going to be able to be spending on putting food on the table or shoes on their kids. And people realise that that's not a good direction to be heading. They know that there is another way. The opportunity that the Greens were negotiating with the government of having a fund, a public transport fund, that amount of money could be spent on many different public transport projects. There would have been a very strong argument that the most efficient lot of public transport projects to spend that on and to spread the benefits of that $2 billion over the next 4 years would have been a massive investment in outer suburban bus services and bus services serving regional and rural communities, because they are the people that currently do not have the choice of public transport, and they are the people for whom any increase in fuel is going to mean less money that they've got to spend on other essential household and family goods and services. These are the people that we need to be giving them the opportunity, giving them the choice to be able to have public transport that works for them, that can enable them to be able to be travelling, not relying on their cars. The other opportunity that's really been missed here is that not only are we continuing on the direction which is bad for people on low incomes, it is absolutely just continuing on a direction that is not in the interests of the long-term health and the long-term sustainability of our society. We know we have pollution, carbon pollution from increasing use of fossil fuels. We've got the particulate pollution in our cities. We need to be working out, we need to be shifting away from the use of fossil fuels so that we can get outcomes which we can do. We know what the answers are. We know where the money needs to be spent. Outcomes that are going to be good for our climate, shifting us into renewably fuelled transport, good for our climate and good for the shape of our cities and good for the health of people living in those cities. And health is another really important factor that, again, is being disregarded here. By not funding public transport, by meaning that people are having to rely on their cars, they are having to drive, means that they're missing out on the opportunities, the health opportunities of the exercise that could be available. We know that with every public transport journey there is a walk, to whether it's to the bus, to the train or the tram. So just having that regular walk in people's days will reduce their risk of heart disease, reduce issues of weight problems, reduce risk of cancer. These are the sorts of issues that all come together if we were taking a holistic look of being able to create healthy cities but yet it's the direction that the government and the Labor Party are ignoring, totally missing that opportunity. I want to finish on the deal that's been done on putting this money into roads to recovery projects. As I said, exactly what the government wanted. They would have spent the money on roads anyway. I think, as a former councillor, I know the benefits of roads to recovery. I know the councils really need that money to be spending on their local roads. But those road projects, they also need money to be spending on their public transport initiatives. They also need to be spending money on walking and cycling initiatives. They are not being given the choice. We need to work out where a balanced transport budget is. Over the last 50 years, we have had the bulk of funding going into road projects. We can never catch up. You're always fighting to catch up, because the more money you put into road projects, the more people use those roads. The less money you put into public transport, the less opportunity there is for people to use public transport, the more they have to use the roads. It's a completely endless cycle, and it's such an inefficient way to be funding our transport networks. If we were having affirmative action for public transport, it means that we can break out of that vicious cycle. We can be giving people the opportunity to be shifting their transport away from expensive car transport into public transport. It means that if we were giving local governments the opportunity as funding sources not just to be funding roads, but also to be funding walking and cycling, we're giving people the opportunity to be able to travel their journeys, particularly the short journeys under 5 kilometres, which in fact are the majority of journeys that people take, by walking and cycling and improving their health. Doing all of these things leads to a positive, healthy situation both for the people of Australia and for our climate. So, roads to recovery projects, all very well, but we need to be having a much better balance. We need to be having a balance in transport funding so that we could reach a situation where I reckon we could have approximately a third of all journeys being made by walking and cycling, a third of all journeys being made by public transport, and a third of all journeys being made by private vehicle transport, with those private vehicle trips increasingly being made by cars that are being fuelled by renewable fuels. That would be the sort of balance that would be heading us into a positive future, that would be really addressing the issues of fuel security, of climate change, of unhealthy people, and of the impact, the cost of transport on low-income peoples. We have missed that opportunity completely today, but we know that the Greens will continue to fight for it, and we know that we have the support of the Australian community in support for healthy communities, in support for actively encouraging walking and cycling, in support for public transport. And so we know the fight is going to go on, but I am just so disappointed that today we have missed such an incredible and important opportunity to be furthering our progress on these issues.